this is Amber Laura with Litly Bear, and in my last video I talked about world building in fiction. And at least I hope that I was able to explain what world building is, why it's important in fiction, and how and where it's created. At least how and where I create it, which starts with kind of a map that I create for each individual place where my characters will live in. And you know, I build the map so that there's continuity, so that there's consistency, so that I know as the writer what I'm writing about, so that I can translate it more naturally and flawlessly to the reader. But in this video I wanted to talk about how you transition from your map into the actual writing so it's more fluid. And so I started writing a story about this character Kat and her apartment. And so I'm going to read some of those descriptions that I put into the story. A couple of things I want to say off the bat. Number one, in this particular piece of writing, I probably added a little bit more description than I typically would, but I did it so that I could prove the point for this exercise. And number two, what I'm about to read, it is a draft. It is a first draft. And that's because this is an ongoing story and I'm not going to have a finished draft until I complete it. So for the timeline's sake, I'm going to read this. So I'll begin now. With dogged steps, Catherine Cryer let herself into her small, second-story apartment. Juggling the long, thin strap of her leather purse and 3 paper bags of groceries against her hip, she just managed to wiggle through the doorway. Without bothering to kick off her shoes, she strode purposely down the long, narrow hallway, her feet turning when it veered abruptly to the left, at the end of which was her kitchenette. Dropping the bags unceremoniously on one of the counters, she just bit back exhaustion. It wasn't quite 5 o'clock on Friday evening, and she was definitely in need of the looming weekend. Pulling out a carton of milk and a stalk of celery, she opened her refrigerator door. I'm going to slip into a pair of fleece pajamas, order in pizza, and binge-watch TV straight through to Sunday evening, she vowed, depositing the food items quickly before reaching back into one. And the story continues, but I'm going to pause here because you'll see in those first about 200 words, mostly all that I was doing was introducing the character, introducing her mental state, she's exhausted, and showing you her house. You know, the upside down backward L that leads to her kitchen, and her depositing some of her food into her cupboards and her refrigerator. And so then the story continues because now she's kind of remembering her day. And so I'm slipping or kind of teasing into the story a little bit of why she's so exhausted, and I'm showing you a little bit of that mental state. And so then the story continues. Opening the refrigerator door again, she brought out a can of sparkling water. Whatever, she mumbled, popping the top off the citrus-flavored drink. Shuffling out of the kitchen, she crossed the narrow hallway into her living room. The bank of windows against 2 of the 4 walls flooded the room in early evening light. Normally, she would have found the pinkish glow warm and cozy. Today, it only seemed to highlight her staid existence. The large oval lamp, a relic of the 90s, the bulky coffee table her parents had given her when she'd first moved out, the oatmeal-colored carpet. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. So you'll notice that I have her go across the hallway into her living room, and I give you just a little tease of what that room looks like. And you'll notice I didn't really describe anything fully. There's an oval lamp from the 90s. Well, so now I'm telling the reader what's in there, but I'm only giving them a frame. I'm letting the reader create that lamp themselves. Because probably they've come across a lamp that looks very 90s in their life, and so they can transplant that lamp into her room, and that'll make it a little bit more real to them. I've shown them that there is a lamp, and now they get to color that in. And there's kind of this happy balance between description where you don't want to necessarily just do an overload on their senses of every minute detail. A, it's kind of boring, and B, it is just a sensory overload. You're like, I can't picture all of this at one time. But then you'll notice in my very next sentence, I do the exact opposite, and she goes, I write, sinking down into her bamboo-framed couch, the cushions a magnificent splash of lime green and white geometric designs. She sighed. Okay, so the couch is very descriptive and it's very detailed. And I do that because that balance makes it a lot easier for the reader to imagine that very, very intimate piece of furniture. So it's easier for them to fixate on that and create whatever the writer wants because they're not getting overloaded with 20 different items. And so then the story progresses, it continues with her night and kind of what happens. And really for the rest of that chapter, any more world building and description that I use is really just kind of peppered in and out of the story in small glimpses. For example, quite a ways down, you'll see a sentence that I wrote, Kat's eyes roamed desperately around the peach-painted walls of her living room, her sight catching on the leafy peace lily by the window, the slightly ajar door leading to her bathroom, the television set. And again, same concept as before, it's that happy balance between giving just enough detail to fuel the reader's imagination, but it doesn't pull them out of the story so they can try to figure out exactly what everything looks like. And then balancing that out with some very descriptive, very personal items that you really want them to create according to your specifications. So it's that balance. There's one other part of world building or description in particular that I want to talk about, and so I put it into this story, and it happens right at the end. And so I'll read the description first, and then I'll explain what's important about it. Entering the dimly lit kitchen, she took herself to the cupboard reserved for snack food. Opening the door carefully, for it hung loosely and crookedly, ready to fall off its half-secured hinge at any moment, she peered inside. Reaching up, she grabbed down a packet of popcorn, but she knew almost as quickly as she retrieved it that she didn't want it. Tossing it down on the counter, she went to shut the cupboard door, her fingers guiding its handle cautiously as she pressed it closed against the magnetic latch on the frame. Letting go, she watched the door sink a little with the weight of gravity. Okay, so one of the reasons that I put that piece of description in is it was symbolic. It's really kind of showing you, again, that mental state of being tired and exhausted, and this stayed existence that was referred to earlier on. So it's really kind of giving you a close-up view of that. And the second reason is this detail, this one crooked door in her kitchen. I mean, it's so minute. It's such a tiny thing to really focus on. But I did it because it will play a pivotal spot. It'll play a pivotal point in the overall plot of the story. And that's just kind of a general concept that a lot of writers follow, is that if you're going to do that, if you're going to make one very small thing very detailed, and you're going to spend the time and you're going to ask the reader to invest in this really, really zoomed in picture of such a small thing, make that time, that description count. Have a purpose for it, have a reason for it. So that kind of wraps up this general idea of how to take the concept of world building and put it into a story in a fluid and natural way. I hope that this was really helpful for you. Again, this is Amber Laura with Litly Bear, and if you were at all interested in the story that I am writing, that I really briefed over, it is going to be a web serial on my blog, litlybear.com, and so it will be a free fictional story that I will post chapter by chapter, week by week. Again, if you are interested, I encourage you to check it out, litlybear.com. Thank you.